Welcome to another episode of Are We Clear Yet? We're seeking clarity through dialogue is how we move. We're so happy you joined us today. I got two of my brothers in the room. I got Dub and I got Al. Al, how you feeling today, man?
Feeling good, man. I've been really taking it like life is so important and life is so essential and life is not worth the stress. So I've been just chilling, man, and I'm celebrating life, brother.
Digging it. Mr. Dub, how you feeling, sir?
Feeling all right, man. You know, it's been a long week, maybe two, but man, listen, I'm still alive. Every day above ground, man. I'm thankful every single day for me and my family, my friends and their families. Every day, man. Listen, I don't take none of this for granted. Every day is a blessing, bro. So
I hear that. The weather is nicer. The wardrobe has been changing outside. And
beautiful.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all that he has done. I'm so thankful. And we're going to have a really good discussion today. I'm really looking forward to it. There is a piece of media we're going to play for you guys, and we're going to talk about it on the other side. Check it out.
I understand that a lot of men, we don't really run away from marriage. We run away from divorce.
That's a fact.
We're not running away from marriage. But you gotta understand, if I found out what marriage is, it's like, I love my girl to death, but you mean to tell me if I make one mistake, they can ruin me for the rest of my life on one mistake? If she make a mistake, it's cool. She make a mistake, divorce is she just go on about her life. I make a mistake that can cost me for the rest of my, that ain't really fair. You know, one day I want to make my girl that happy because it's truly for her. And I'm man enough to say men don't look into, and it's coming from somebody who parents been married. I'm 35. My parents been married since I was 5.
Right.
So this coming from a married home couple. I don't. It's just what they done made it to be now.
Right.
It's like, okay, I see married people. It's really a money game now. It seems like it's like I get married. There's no benefits for me. It's no benefits for me but to make her happy. So now if I get married, okay, cool. Now as a man or whoever I am, I haven't made no mistake with my girl for 8 years. Right. Never got no Texas, came to her as no woman. No woman came to her as no woman. I'm not on camera. I'm not doing nothing. I done did my thing. You know what I'm saying? So you mean to tell me if I slip up, I do something else, and she just feel like she don't want to give me a chance, she could possibly take half of what I own.
Very, very, very interesting. I mean, lots of topics and subjects and statements made in that clip. I mean, two large subjects in particular, in the front end being the idea of the quote unquote male's fear of marriage, fear of commitment. They're afraid to let go of the single lifestyle on the one end. And on the other end, almost the fragility of marriage, the sensitivity of marriage. And is the scale tipped in one gender's favor versus the other? Is it even-handed treatment for behavior? Is there a more harmful outcome for one versus the other on the other end of a marriage? I mean, what do you guys think?
Oh man,
this one, brother.
There's a lot to unpack in that clip. I don't agree with everything. I mean, there's a couple of things he said were problematic, but you know, before we completely unpack it, let me just kind of talk about the fear part. So in a previous pod, right, I believe I was asking you, Dean, if you were to sign up for a skydiving lesson, and during the skydiving instruction, the instructor said only 43 of these parachutes were open, would you go on the skydiving lesson? And so, yes. And that was a resounding no, because the odds are not in your favor. And so marriage right now, only 43% of marriages survive, right? The divorce rate is 57%. And then when you consider, of the 43% of the marriages that are surviving, what's the percentage of the couples that are actually happy? What's the percentage of the couples who are not cheating on each other and who are not disrespecting each other? That 43% it decreases by a lot. So I can understand the fear in stepping into something that has shown is not very successful as of late.
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Al.
think the bigger fear too is that 69% of the initiation of divorces come from versus 31 from a man. So from his perspective, I mean, his fear is on point. I mean, I can't argue with it because he's seeing where he's come from a stability platform with his parents who've been married for 30 years, and he's seeing his friends and everyone around him, they don't last. And it doesn't take much to get a divorce. I think what happened, man, is people became very impatient. We became too much of a microwave society, and nobody wants to work. They just want a Disney World relationship. And I think whenever you involve any type of adversity or any type of situation, that's going to cause them to rub on each other a little bit.
That's what she said.
And not in that sense, obviously, but yeah, that's what she said. Anything that causes them to have any kind of friction, it seems like nowadays people are not willing to endure. And I think it's a lot of apprehension on a lot of people's parts because they don't want to go through. I mean, I've got a friend who thinks that the solution to this is to go get an African because he feels that Africans.
Shout out to the continent, the beautiful, beautiful continent of Africa. God bless. Shout out.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
You know,
go ahead.
Finish up, yeah. Go ahead. No, if you believe what the news clippings say about the current state of affairs, it's dating is, oh man, this kind of sucks. You know, she doesn't want to go to Cheesecake Factory, whatever. Then you got big old, then you have, of course, the whole ring thing. And, you know, there's a camp over here that said, well, you know, that ring needs to be X amount of months of your salary for it to be a real ring. And then maybe you have a group over here that doesn't really care about that. And well, which one do you actually, which side is your potential wife on? Who knows? Then you got the big film production wedding. Who paying for it? I don't know. Am I paying for it? And your folks paying for it? That's one thing. And then you see almost very little about the actual substance of the marriage and its benefits and the value of it and the sanctity of it and the beauty of it. And so if you kind of believe what you're seeing, and by no means am I putting that forth as an excuse for people to not be married. I believe in the institution of marriage very much. But if you just solely go off that, which the reality of it is, those messages are being perpetrated throughout all forms of media, print media, visual media, all kinds of stuff, it could be not the most attractive thing in the world. And so I do believe strongly that many men are viewing those elements. They're viewing those examples and situations and circumstances. And they're like, I don't want that. That doesn't seem very desirable for me. And I do believe he eventually, and then like Dub said, there's a lot of problematic stuff he said in there that is just like, I don't know about that, bro. But he does get to the other end of the journey. The unfortunate end to many marriages is the divorce. And where does that leave you? Oh, and even before we even get to that, maybe the grounds, quote unquote, for the divorce. I believe he's alluding to the idea of it being treated very differently based off who is doing.
So one of the things that he said that I had an issue with, well, it's this notion that, you know, one mistake. So I kind of want to know what the mistake he was alluding to. I think I kind of have that figured out, and I'll dive deeper into that a little later. But I actually find that women are a lot more forgiven in mistakes than guys are. Maybe that's just my experience, or maybe the guys that are as forgiven, we're not aware of those guys because those guys are considered a part of that quack epidemic we spoke before. So, you know, there's probably a lot of guys that we don't know about in shame who have forgiven some trespasses. But I think women are a lot more forgiven, I would say, in marriages and relationships. I think they're more willing to fight to save it. Now, again, based on what Al just said, 69%, I thought it was actually higher, but 69% are filed by women. You know, how many of those were just after she's had enough, after there's no...
Yeah, no, I could only imagine once you start breaking down the data points, and I mean, how would you, outside of maybe polling a very, very large group of, recently filed individuals, the reason, or maybe a little bit more detail in, was it one instance of infidelity? Was it multiple instances of infidelity? Was it multiple lies about finances, in maybe hidden behavior and hidden assets, or which I'm just gonna just group all those as just lies. Like there tends to be woven in the middle of it. Obviously, irreconcilable differences can mean a plethora of things, but I think many people, they'll usually interwoven in that, there will be something that created the divide, that created the distrust, that just really created the emotional separation long before, much long before the physical separation. And Dub, you mentioned that women tend to be, in your experience, a bit more forgiving. I would tend to agree with that. I think wrapped into that thought is the type of people we talked about picking good a few episodes back. And ideally, you want to be a person, first and foremost, that has grace in your heart and your life. But you also probably want to pick someone that's got some of that too. Now, that's not obviously a license to go out there and be stupid, but you probably want to choose very selectively, because errors of judgment are going to happen on both sides. So then the person whom you've chosen for this beautiful life together, ideally, well, if they don't really have that in their heart, well, you in some big old trouble. Big trouble.
Big facts. It's crazy because I think the needle has moved really far, whether it's left or right. But I mean, it's to think that over 80% of Americans think that divorce is morally acceptable. You know what I mean? Where everybody is now more concerned about themselves than they are about the couple, in the sense that if I'm happy, I'm good. And if I'm happy, you don't have to be happy. I only care about my happiness. And I think when people get to that point, the work to make it work is not going to ever be there. I don't think. People go into it knowing that in about 8 years we're going to be done, and they work to be done rather than work to last. And I think most of our pods that we've come across, we've talked about the fact that to make something successful, whatever it is, you have to put the work in. At your job, you go through certain levels of additional training, continuing educational credits, or whatever the case might be, because things change. Your car, you take your car to the shop because things are wearing out. You got to get them replaced. You got to get them redone, resurfaced, whatever the case might be. I think the one thing that I don't see us putting a lot of work in is a relationship. And I'm not sure why that is, but it just seems like we're fickle when it comes to that. And it's like, okay, on to the next one. And even, I know we laughed a little bit earlier, but thinking about my guy, man, and like, it's wanting someone who is going to just say, yes, 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 yes. And I'm not sure how good that is for anybody's psyche, but, you want someone who you can fully control. And I think that's kind of what, who sets the standard? Who is the one that says this is how it should be? Individuals are in relationships. We're no longer coming together as a couple. It's more like, I feel this way, he feels that way. Okay, then let's separate. I think we got to get to a point where we get back to mutuality, finding a way that works, a path that works for both.
That part in the movie, and Dub, we probably watch too much television and movies. There's a part in the movie where they're like, what keeps you up at night? Like, what's that thing that keeps you up at night? And it's usually like, this one type of villain that preys on this type of person and all that kind of stuff. You want to know what keeps me up at night? The idea of being yoked to a woman that doesn't stimulate my mind, that doesn't motivate me, that doesn't check me, that doesn't have vision of her own that I can't get behind. That keeps me up at night. The idea that they, or even worse, that they have those things, but they're not like comfortable enough to share it with me. That keeps me up at night. That seems like a circumstance and an ideal where, man, that's rough. That's really rough. That's challenging. that's not a situation that I would be in. So the idea of being with someone that is just going to be a yes person and not serve to enrich me as I'm enriching her, that is so unattractive. That is so not desirable. I want no parts. It keeps me up at night. And we probably all know someone in a similar type of situation where one, if not both, are purely going through the motions day to day, just kind of clocking in and clocking out. And, maybe they've made the marriage work for 5 or 6 years, and that could be presumed or viewed as success. That could be viewed as they're doing it right, and hey, they're still together. And just the mere fact of on paper they are still a union, that is successful marriage. Well, man, that's not my standard personally. I wouldn't want that to be anyone's standard that I care about, at least. Like, if I care about you, I do not want that for you, my friend. I can't call you my friend and want that for you. I can't.
I mean, the principle, not to cut you down real quick, but the mutuality is to share, man, whether it's a feeling, an action, or a relationship between two people. And the scariest thing for me is where I'm in a relationship and I'm the only one thinking. As you said, somebody's afraid to challenge you or to have a conversation. But it seems like today, in today's society, if someone challenges somebody, it's room for, well, I don't want to be with you anymore because you argue too much. No, he or she's just spurring you to thought. Here's another perspective. Think about it. Like, I'm not always right. She's not always right. But if we can, whether it's encourage or stimulate each other to the point that we can see another perspective, that might help us to do something brand new, something different. That's actually
fear,
add value
right?
to the
a lot of fear is irrational. Not all fear, but I think a lot of it. And so, Dean, I mean, back to what keeps you up at night. It shouldn't, man, because, I feel like you are intellectual enough, man, to where you would never get yoked to someone like that. Now, our other friend, Maine, so we have some concerns about him because he's looking for a slave is what he's looking for. And that's not what we do around here, man. So, let's go back to the fear, right? Because the guy in the video was talking about, fear. Okay, so, I think that fear of divorce is rational based on the current statistics, right? So if it was flipped, or if 85% of marriages survived today, then that fear would be irrational in my eyes. But at this current clip, the fear of divorce and losing your stuff is more than a fair fear to have. FAIR and FEAR. I'm not going to say that there are no benefits for a man for being married. I'm not going to say there are none.
The absolutes will get you, boy.
However,
they'll get you.
This is the crux of the issue, right? Is the liability worth the benefits? So each man has to weigh his perceived benefits in the marriage versus the liability if the marriage does not work. And that's what you have to consider. It's a pros and cons, and I think that's what causes the fear, because again, if you believe that there are no benefits to being married, then you shouldn't even be really discussing it. I mean, because you're never going to get married. You don't find a benefit in being married. So what's the use in talking about it? So there are benefits for both parties in a marriage, but you now have to, again, weigh that liability versus your perceived benefits for it.
Yeah. And, it's been said that, marriage is, I've heard the comparison or the analogy of marriage being compared to like gambling. One thing about gambling is, you better not sit at the poker table if you're not prepared to lose some money. Okay, there is some inherent risk in marriage. Okay, it is sacrificial in nature from the rip. Okay, engagement rings, proposal parties, the wedding, the all the things. Okay, essentially the social norm that, and people gonna jump in the comments, whatever. Men are expected to be breadwinners, typically, not always. We understand that there are amazing women that have amazing careers and businesses, and they are well exceeding their husbands in income. We understand that. But there is no doubt an expectation of the man to, hey, I need you to, and there's also almost an implicit understanding that, hey, we have kids. I don't work for a while. I need you to step up. That's a beautiful, in a sense, also a beautiful kind of situation and challenge, because, hey, I have the beauty and the benefit of being a father, and it's a less of a burden, so to speak, on my wife and the mother. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go extra hard for the benefit of the children and the wife and the mother. And that's a fantastic thing. The point being, when you sit down at that table, you better be prepared to feel physically and emotionally and tangibly the risk involved in getting married, because the risk is there. The challenges are going to be there. Now, you might walk away from that table, with a whole, armful of chips. You might walk away from that table with absolutely nothing. Well, if you're not ready, and I'm saying this as an unmarried person with the intention of being married, if you're not ready to sit down at that table with a clear, sober mind, and I just had a thought, but I'm not going to explore that thought right now. If you're gonna sit there at the table, please come with the understanding that there is some inherent risk to what you're doing. But if you understand the risk, you understand the circumstances, go forth, my man. Go forth and experience those beautiful, I believe, benefits and experiences of being in a healthy, ideally, marriage. But if you go in like, you know what, I'm just going to sit at this table and have this attitude and have a negative mindset, and then as soon as something goes wrong, you're freaking out and you're panicking, you may not have wanted to sat down at that poker table.
I mean, that's a fact. I think you said something, though. You could either win or lose, and it's the mindset and the intention when you sat down. And even bigger than that, let's say you do lose. Do I not come back to the table for an opportunity to try to gain or win again? So again, there's your mindset. So what is it? Whether we win or lose, how do we navigate that situation? And I think that's a part of the problem with a lot of relationships. No one wants to be subject to the other. I see all my needs. I see all my wants. I want everything for me, but I'm not willing to give what the other person is giving to me. I just want to get. And a lot of relationships are like that. And I think that's where the dynamic gets really muddy.
In poker, you can make all the right moves and still lose. I feel like, with marriage, the two people involved in the marriage have 100% control over whether or not their marriage survives or fails. And so that would be the one disagreement I have with the poker analogy. But the two people have to listen. We're in 2024, right? And I feel like there's still millions of people, man, who just have no idea how hard marriage is. I mean, well, not just how hard, but the amount of work, the work that it takes. Yeah. And
yeah,
this is not microwave society, like you said, Al. I mean, so here's the thing.
Agreed. Life
is that work harder. Work smarter, not harder.
From that standpoint,
that's not always a good thing. It's not always a good thing. And I think that type of mentality is what has kind of led us to cutting corners with a lot of stuff, including our marriages. But man, I feel kind of bad, man, for the people right now who are trapped in marriages, like you said earlier, Dean, with just going through the motions. They're just going through the motions, man, so that they can say that they're still married, man. And it's just, at that point, is it a marriage?
Yeah. And just as a small point of order, that poker analogy probably runs its course, up until the point where you start playing. It's more so the decision to sit down and engage. So that you're in control up until the point where you sit down in that chair. Once you sit down in that chair, anything could happen at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Anything. But if you're going to say you're about it and you're going to sit down and engage, miss me with all the complaining. Okay. So as you have a certain amount of control, but then yes, undoubtedly there's amount of variable of a lack of control, so to speak, for sure. But yeah, that's probably where my analogy starts to fall apart to some degree. Go ahead, Al.
Is there a rhythm there? Because just like in any game, you're watching basketball, typically teams going to run when there's a rhythm. Everything is symbiotically coming together. It's happening. It's flowing. You got, football for those sports fans out there. So I'm wondering, I've not really played poker, but I'm thinking most things to me that tend to do well develop some sort of a rhythm, a give and take, ebbs and flows. And they're a better understanding of what's happening. And I think the bigger part that's missing from all of this conversation is making a commitment to each other, in that relationship, showing that it's just as important as each individual person. So yeah, we're individuals, but together when we make that commitment, we become one. And I think that rhythm, how I can talk to you, how you can understand me, how you can hear more than what I'm saying. Because sometimes maybe I don't know the right words to use, but when I talk to you, you can pull out, you can extract the things that I'm really trying to tell you. And these things can help me communicate better with you. So I think it's a matter of knowing each other well enough. So, where I am in a diminished state, you are strong and you can lift me up and we can meet better, and work things through. So I think conceptually that to me, helps the development of that relationship.
Yeah. And I don't want to say in an ideal world, because sometimes I think I just sound ridiculous when I say that, but there is that, if I'm tracking with what you're saying, there is that all important congruence that is required, namely on specific subjects and within certain big areas of a marriage, that there needs to be a consensus. Obviously, these are two individuals deciding to become one. That doesn't mean you think like me. That doesn't mean I think like you. However, this word, I always think about it, and I kind of have thought about it in my older years, turning 40 this year. Shout out to all the 40-year-olds. This idea of congruence. I want, even if my philosophies are different in nature, I desire to, even if my style is different, there should be some measure of congruence from me to you with how we're going to approach parenting, finances, family, outside voices weighing in to our union. And so, ideally it should be, okay, well, you know what? I think like this. I'm wired to think like this. And I'm going to articulate that to you. And you're going to be listening to me. And you're going to do the same. You're going to articulate how you feel and what you think and your position and your philosophy on this. And we reach an agreement, because it's, yes, depending on whatever school of thought you come from as far as leadership in a marriage, that's a whole nother can of worms. But if we're going to be pushing forward together, we need to be continuously having this convergence of thoughts and philosophies and approaches, putting it out there in the open and proceeding from there. Ideally, and I said it again, we were able to kind of suss out a lot of this premarital and all those kinds of things. And then as things go along, as we grow together, as we're married, obviously you cannot tackle every single thing in premarital, so on and so forth. But if we start on good ground, and if we're clear-minded that we're actually starting on good ground and that we're not lying to ourselves even when something's blatantly wrong in our face as far as things not being right, if we got good ground, I just believe you're giving it a shot. A good shot.
I mean, I think that's accurate. I think, too, there's a level of dishonesty that is prevalent. That's just all around, man.
Dishonesty?
Like, what is that? I don't know.
No.
What are you saying? Come on, man.
No.
A lot of deception. A lot of... I think people aren't telling the truth, man.
Clutching my pearls, man. I can't believe any of this.
It was a movie, man. Oh my God, I'm gonna get you, sucker. I don't know if you guys remember that movie.
The Wayans, right?
But yeah, the Wayans. Yeah. Shout out to the Wayans, man. They set a lot of careers off. But there was a scene in the movie where dude, he met a girl at
Arsenio Hall.
And
Arsenio. Yeah.
Took her home. When she was done taking everything off, including a leg, I believe, at one point.
Oh, I remember now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when she was done, brother, like who he met in the club wasn't who he was in the room with. And I'm like, so a lot of facades, man, a lot of dishonesty, man. And I think if people can just peel back and have a desire for being open, and I'm not saying vulnerable to a point that you're going to get hurt, but I think the truth here, is going to meet truth. But when you're deceiving, at some point, that's going to create so much tension later on. And I think being willing to meet each other's needs in ways that work for both partners is the key to a successful marriage. I just don't think that that's the mindset of the people, in society today.
And we forgot about the honesty within one's own self, from the standpoint of, telling myself, because it sounds good, I'm ready to do this. Knowing good and doggone well I got no place yoking up with someone and dealing with that kind of smoke. And again, I'll say it for the 30th time. I believe marriage is that good smoke. But I'm not gonna lie to myself.
Right.
Going in with some fairy tale butterfly, notion that, oh, this is easy. I just read a book. It's fine. I mean, there's a book for everything. Like, no, how about appreciating the weight of what it is? And that's not to make it overly burdensome or purely burdensome, but it is a weight. It is a responsibility. It is a serious thing. It is someone's life. See the TikTok girl, episode 35. It is a very serious matter. So I should be taking it very seriously. She should be taking it very seriously. Go in clear-minded about what it is to the best of your ability. Get some wise counsel. Get around some good, healthy couples. Get the counseling. Please do meditate and pray and get your own self before you insert yourself in someone else's life, before you mess around and wreck and mess them up. So by all means, don't lie to the other person, but boy, you better not lie to yourself. If you lie to yourself from the rip, you in trouble.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up at that point, man. Yeah, you're definitely setting yourself up.
You in trouble, boy.
The two genders, and I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to offend anybody. So let me just listen.
Excuse me?
The two genders that we have here, we are wired completely different. We are wired. So think about this concept, right? Of relationships and marriage. We are wired completely different. There was one of my friends on posting on Facebook one time, and of course, if it's on Facebook, that means it's 100% accurate and sarcasm. But I think he put some percentage out there that just normal discussion that men and women only see eye to eye on like 31% of issues or something like that. And so we're two different people that we can look at the same thing and come up with two completely different narratives and perspectives. And we have to come together. We have to come together as one. Two people who are just wired completely different, think differently, act differently. A lot of double standards that come with both genders. Yeah, there are double standards that favor both men and favor women. So it's from the onset, it has to be strong because you're coming into this thing already, handicapped because it's just men and women are not the same. That's one of the biggest issues. We're just not the same. So we have to, to coexist. That causes a lot of issues, or it can.
That's a big fact.
Oh, wait, what's that?
But some people don't realize.
What's that?
Listen, man. Some people don't realize, right, that, dude, scary as this is, there's a thing called conversation. Listen, it's
read my mind, Al. I just thought
come on. Listen, people don't realize that.
Thinking about this all day.
Oh my gosh. Like, you're supposed to know. But a win-win really consists of expressing, that comes from asking, checking all your senses, man, to see if you're being heard, restating, affirming your expressions, reversing roles sometimes, because I got to see what you see, right? Because maybe from my perspective, I'm not seeing what's going on. So for me, asking questions for me is to learn from each other, and it alters the narrative, influences, all the context of our lives. And if people understand that, if you are just open to listening to the question, you may not even have the answer, brother, but listen to the question. It could percolate. But scarily, so scarily though. So here's the thing. I think some women and men go into a particular relationship based on what they think they can get if it ends. So it's already starting off bad, right? I think there was a basketball player, man, who might have been Gilbert Arenas, who he was supposed to get married, forgot to sign the prenup. And just before they're about to exchange vows, he's like, hey, I forgot to do this. We need to do this. And her response was, nah, I'm not signing that because, like if we break up, I want to get what I'm going to get. And I think going into a lot of these marriages, like it's already set for failure because like the mindset is that, what can I get from this? Rather than what can we make of this? And so people are looking to gain. And his fear to me is valid. Like if I'm building something and I've got, these assets, I'm not fearful that you may have improper intention, and there's no way for me to look through you and put you through any kind of an x-ray machine and know what your clear thoughts or intentions really are. And so I think it gets to where, so the man is now on edge, which then triggers something that causes an argument that leads to him storming out the house, that leads to him, and I'm not justifying it, but leads to him cheating and then coming back, hey, I cheated. And then it becomes another problem. And then we get the divorce and now you got half my money. So I think it's something where we've got to get our young people or people thinking about having honest conversation, man, and getting into these relationships with cause. And we can go all night on this, but I think, we've hit this and I think we can do so much more with it, man. What do you think, Dean?
We can, and maybe we need to revisit it on the next one or in a couple, what have you. But I think you kind of brought back something I was mentioning before in the building upon good ground, good, healthy ground. Because, oh, by the way, and it will forever be a controversial subject. If you are with someone and they're proposing a prenuptial agreement and you do not believe you should sign off on it, and the other person is pretty firm on the idea, that should probably be an indicator that you aren't quite on the same page. So I think wisdom would say, before you move forward with any substantial plans for the future with that person, you might want to dig into that very, very, very deeply. Versus, I think it might have been Steven Jackson that happened to, but you might want to look at that very, very closely, because yes, it is inherently about assets on its face, but it's also connected to some other matters. So again, if that is a circumstance that serves as a stumbling block for you, whether it's the man or the woman, so let's say the woman is proposing a prenuptial agreement. Let's say she's accumulated a substantial amount of assets and income and has children, and those children are relying upon those assets, and you're presenting an agreement to your soon-to-be husband that will shield and protect those assets to some degree. Well, if that is a stumbling block for you, Mr. Groom, you might want to explore that in some depth. I would believe, and I tend to think most professionals would say, before you go too far in the planning stages, be honest with yourself and address that head on, I think. But again, the subject of prenuptial agreements is a whole can of worms, and it gets a little crazy. It does. Nevertheless, I love this talk, guys. This was awesome. And again, we may need to run this back. Let us know in the comments if we need to run this back on the next episode and kind of continue where we left off. We would love to do that.